Welcome to Music Ed Tech Talk, a podcast exploring music, education, technology, and the intersections between them, with a special focus on the productive and creative process. I'm your host, Robbie Burns. Thanks to my sponsor this week, Light the Music. With me today, again, is Ben Denne. How's it going?
Going great. Glad to be here.
That's awesome. We're back. We're here to talk about another topic that I'm presenting at this weekend at the Ohio Music Educators Association Conference. And I thought that both of these topics would be great to talk about with you specifically, because last episode was all about teaching intonation with the support of technology, which is something you wrote your master's thesis on and are very, very passionate and skilled at. And then this week is all about communication and collaboration apps for music teachers, and you are one of the few people who I actually use these apps to communicate and collaborate with. So I figured we can offer kind of like the first-hand experience, not only of surveying what are some of these tools, but how actually, I'm going to sort of explain some best case uses of them, and then we'll talk about how in practice we actually use these with our team. So just a couple of bits of follow-up before we get to that. First thing first, I presented speaking of presentations, at the National Association for Music Merchants Conference last Friday as of this recording, and that was super fun. And head over to my blog if you want to see the session notes from that. There is some technology and music news this week. Spotify is in the news, but I think we're going to touch on that when we get to our app, album, and tech tip of the week section. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Even though we work in the same building, because of the way that our classes are structured, we never have the same time off. We have one big rehearsal room, so all the bands get to rehearse in the morning, all the orchestras in the afternoon, and these online communication devices are so helpful for us.
Yeah, I mean, and not to mention, some of these last year we had to use because there was just, even if we had the opportunity to be in person, let me rephrase that. We didn't even have the opportunity to be in person at all. So yeah, I mean, these were things, and we've used some of the things in today's episode since before the pandemic, and I think it really helped us last year. But I think last year sort of really refined, okay, as we're depending on these tools, which ones, now that we are not fully dependent on them, are the ones that sort of survive and offer us utility even though we are still in person. So I think that, we're a pretty unique team to talk about it. We definitely are using things. We're going to go beyond email and Google Docs, which is kind of where I'm going to start the presentation, kind of starting off with those are the most common tools. We're going to kind of talk about things that are for specifically talking back and forth, but also a lot of things that allow you to work in the same workspaces creatively on the same information. So I guess, do you want to just head on straight down the order of the outline?
We can. I think it's worth mentioning that one of the biggest pitfalls to email is I think everybody looks at it differently. Everybody has a different role for email in their workflow, and it's already defined. And so some of these apps are really helpful because when you introduce them, you can sort of define how you use them as a team, and that helps tremendously in using them together.
Right. Email to some is they use it the same way they use a text message, real curt, short, back and forth. Some people treat it like they're writing a letter with a pen and paper, and they are very, very formal. Sometimes email is just information. Sometimes it requires a task to be done. Sometimes it just needs to be read and referenced. And that, mixed with people's sort of different expectations about how much effort you're putting into email, it can be tricky. I know I kind of am even moving on wherever I am on that spectrum is not not always even consistent. Sometimes I put a little bit of thought into email, and I try to really carefully word it so that if there is any such thing as tone in email, it can be properly interpreted. Of course, it never is anyway when I try. And then sometimes I'm just real curt and short, and it's in the interest of responding to parents, for example, in a more timely fashion, I'm just going to give them the information they asked for as quickly as I can hit send, and then hope for the best. But yeah, let's go at these. I think this first one in the outline is, Slack is kind of marketed as a replacement for email. It sort of exists in this weird space between email and basic messaging, which I guess before even Slack, do you want to talk about messaging? Because our music team, we iMessage each other a fair bit.
Sure. I mean, the biggest problem with iMessages is they tend to have a sunset on how long those messages are good for. They're very good for like quick questions, things like that, things that happen in the day. I wouldn't want to try to run a conversation that requires any more than a couple hours of talking on a text message.
And this is actually where Slack kind of enters in, is Slack takes a lot of the formality out of email, and it sort of like puts you into this environment where you can define a team and invite your team all to this shared workspace where more or less you are having text message style conversations. There's not like introductions and like signatures. You're just basically texting each other, but you're organizing into different threads of conversation, which helps you to keep the conversations more long-lasting and more organized. So, for example, and Slack calls these channels. So our music team in our Slack workspace, all 4 of our team members are all interacting, but we have different channels on the left sidebar, which are noted with a hashtag, which represent different things that we often talk about. So like there is a symphony orchestra channel for just the symphony orchestra directors. There's a band channel for just the band directors. There's a general channel for general discussion. There's a random channel where you can just designate all of your like GIFs and memes and fun stuff. And then there's like a concert channel for discussing just specifically like how to get prepared for a concert. And all of this conversation is tracked in these threads where it's a lot easier to organize and find.
Yet it's tracked in a way that's not really tracked by your administration or by the powers that be. So you can be free to talk, and you talk about everything with your colleagues in a way that's appropriate for them without having to worry about saying something wrong or getting in trouble for it, which is really important. There's one of our channels is called Meeting Commentary. It helps us stay sane during those long meetings that tend to get a little inane at times. But at the same time, it's a nice, helpful little way to have some banter going on as those meetings are going on. It helps keep our focus, and it gives us some comic relief as well.
Very, very important, that channel. And Slack is super accessible to anyone because, we use it with our own personal accounts so that it is removed from any kind of like oversight from our district. And a free Slack account is very, very generous. The most notable restriction that we run into is that at a certain point, I think it's like 10,000 messages are stored on a free account. And then they start to basically, as you type more messages, they tend to like not save permanently the old ones. But I think that we've found that we get at least a couple of years backlog of message threads with that limitation and haven't really ever found the need to pay them.
Right, and and some channels get more use than others. The general channel is just a general conversation. We have what's going on that day, what questions might come up. Say there's an email from admin saying something has to happen, and we flush it out and make sure everybody understands what's going to happen. And that can be a conversation. And it saves us a meeting. We don't have to meet. We can just put it on the Slack, and everybody knows to be on the same page, which is great. There's certain things like we have a fundraising channel. So if we've got a fundraiser going on, there's going to be a lot of details in regards to that. We don't have to flood the general channel with that. So we can put all those details in the fundraising, and it's right there for anybody who needs it. And it's really nice to have, there's even some long form things. We have a mastery channel where we're talking about music mastery and some long-term ideas for how long we can make our instruction better over time. And so some of those discussions are years long, and that's fine.
Yeah, and I like that this has sort of become a place where we don't just exchange text, but we also share documents that we're working on. And this is great because you can upload a document from your computer to a thread of conversation, but you can also integrate a lot of different web tools. So for example, Google Docs, which we're going to talk about later, a lot of times to share a Google Doc, you just need to like type in the URL link to the document into the Slack and share it. And then you have that document associated with that thread of conversation and with that topic. So Slack, because of its excellent search tools, makes it really easy to go back and find previous messages, but also sometimes that's where I find a document. If I know I shared it with someone earlier, but I just don't remember where it is on my computer, sometimes I can go back and find archives of not only the conversation, but the stuff we were working on together inside them.
Correct. I also use Slack with my team. I conduct a youth orchestra, and we have a team of 3 directors that are all at different schools. And so often we have something that has to get done in a certain day, and it's not a day we're planning on being together or a meeting. We all have classes at different times, and I can write a draft email and ask for feedback. The other teachers, when they have a chance, they can give feedback directly. If I do a Google Doc right on that document, and let me know in Slack when they're done. I can get the okay from everybody to send, and we can get something sent out in a day. when we really didn't have any time to meet together or to talk about it.
Right. And the simplicity of following just a single stream of people's shared thought, it cannot be understated how much easier it is to manage that kind of conversation in little bits throughout the day, like while you're taking a bite of your sandwich or in between two classes. Whereas like email tends to be a little bit more difficult to track the thread of the conversation. So it's helpful. It's really helpful. Do you want to say more about Slack before we talk about the competitors? I have a couple things to say about Microsoft Teams and Discord.
I've seen Slack in a variety of different places. My wife uses it for her business as well. She works in genetics, nothing music education at all. But it's still widely used throughout the business world, and I think it's very effective for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I think it's great. Now, our school district does pay for all teachers to have access to Microsoft 365, which has a competing product, which over the past couple of years has just actually ripped all of the features from Slack and kind of put them in a slightly more cumbersome user experience. But I don't know. I find this interesting. I'm curious your take. Like our school, like if our school was using Microsoft Teams, kind of school wide, in a similar way to how our music team uses Slack, am I incorrect to assume that would alleviate some of the friction of email, or would it just become another really super noisy place where like lots of people had different expectations for how to use it?
Unless it's well defined, it's going to be a noisy place. I think one of the advantages to having Slack is we have a relatively small team. I use Slack for Ellicott Mills with four teachers, for the youth orchestra with 3 teachers, and as it goes back and forth, there's only a small number of voices. As you know very well, that reply all email where you have a staff of 50 people. And everybody says something about it. Suddenly gets very overwhelming and very noisy very quickly. So having ways to divide that into smaller sections can help. But I imagine if you had a whole school-wide Microsoft team, and that general feature would be not very useful after a little while.
Yeah, and the thing, I guess I mentioned Microsoft Teams here and mentioned their similarities only to say that if you are looking to use something like this, and your school district is also paying for Office 365, this is something that you could choose to use with your music team, or like if you're a team leader and you wanted to have your whole team on it, like this is an option for you if you have access to this and without any of the unpaid limitations of their free tier, because Office 365, most accounts, as far as I know, the professional version of Office 365 includes the full version of Teams. The other one is Discord. Discord is like really popular with the kids, but I'm highlighting it only because like if you're listening to this and you have kids who have Discord, or if you yourself use Discord, it is it's sort of like similar in that it has like channels on the left sidebar and different organized discussion threads. I don't know that Discord is really a tool that I figured out how to use for educational purposes. If I did, I'd probably use it to try to do something creative with engaging students, but we're not allowed to do that because of, like data privacy reasons. So I'll just put it out there as another app that behaves similarly, but not one that I'm necessarily using in education.
Got it. I'd not use Discord at all, so I can't contribute on that one.
Yeah, and hey, the Music Ed Tech Talk podcast has a Discord channel if you want to support me on Patreon. So there's a little sneaky self-promotion there. And we discuss all the stuff that's in line with the show. So come join the fun over there. All right, so next up on the list is Todoist, which is not the only kind of app in its class, but it is, I feel like it does a good job representing kind of like web-based to-do apps that have like apps on all platforms. So Todoist, in short, is like a to-do app that can run on the web in a web browser. It can run on your iPhone, on your Android phone, on your tablet. It has an app on almost every platform. And I would almost just to know how to use it, I would almost refer everyone to a podcast episode I did with Dr. Frank Buck, which I will link in the show notes, where we talked all about specifically like managing a task list with apps, because there's no way I can cover everything that a task app can do. But I will say that Todoist is probably one of the most popular options, and it tends to, like, their thing is they're trying to like have most of the features that all the other apps have that they think the average mainstream user needs. So things like tagging, putting tasks into sub-projects, collaborating with others on a list of tasks, You can add notes to tasks. You can add files to tasks. You can have like little mini conversations on just a single task. We haven't used this one as much as Trello, which is coming up next, but Todoist is a nice way. Like if you have, I know for me, I keep a template of stuff we have to do to plan our concerts and stuff we have to do to like go to assessment. I keep a little like template. It is possible to bring in a template into Todoist of reoccurring tasks that you might be sharing with a colleague. So like Nicole, the other band director, and I, like we always have like a list of percussion instruments we need to pack in order to do a concert. We have like someone has to make the concert programs. We have to put the tuba in the car. Someone emails all the teachers and says, hey, check out our concert. Like there's this long list. And sometimes it's nice to be looking in it from two different people's perspective. Cause like if I'm free and I see a little task that she was going to do, I can just check it off right there if I have a spare second to do it. And you can even assign different group members tasks, which is kind of nice. I don't know. What do you think? Todoist? I know you've got thoughts on task management apps.
Well, I'm old school. I usually use the pen and paper to write down the to-do list for that day. But at the same time, I can certainly see the advantages because there's been many times where I've forgotten pieces of the puzzle, especially as I get older. I'm not able to keep all the details in my head that everything needs to happen. And so I'm seeing more and more of a use for a to-do list. Some people love to-do lists for everything that they do. And for them, like any sort of app like this is incredibly helpful. But even something as simple as my wife keeps a packing list, and she keeps, I think she keeps it on Google Docs, but it would work on Todoist as well. But every time we go somewhere, out comes the packing list, and we know exactly what we need to take, and we don't forget anything, and it's remarkable. So I certainly understand the need and the want for to-do lists and for a place to manage them, especially the ones that can save big, long lists of things that need to get repeated over and over again. Because that saves you the mental anxiety of what am I forgetting this time, what I'm not going to have, what am I going to need, how can I fix this? And so, yes, there's certainly a place for music educators. I'm not there yet, but I probably will be there in the next couple of years for sure.
Yeah, and the one thing I mentioned, or rather forgot to mention, is that tasks can have due dates assigned to them. So like this kind of category of app is the ultimate like out of sight, out of mind app. Like all those things that you might have cluttering up your brain, you can like set those out into the future so that you don't have to think about them until their date. And this actually, Todoist is one of many apps that integrates with Slack because these are all tools that are built on the web. You can link your Todoist account to your Slack account, which is really cool because if you have different Slack team members looking into the same channel, you can have a shared Todoist list related to that, for example, concerts. And you can even, it's fun, they created like a little syntax where you can even like assign people tasks and complete tasks right from within the Slack thread. So even if Todoist isn't open, someone can say like, who's bringing the tuba? And then someone else can say, I'll bring it. And then you can like type a little thing like so-and-so, bring the tubas, and then you have to hit like a backslash and then a hashtag, I think, or something like that. It's real easy. But then you basically just like put it into your Todoist in line with the conversation. And as an automation nerd, that presses some buttons for me, that kind of thing.
But in that way, next up, task management it's much like Trello, right?
Yeah. So Trello is the next on the list. And Trello is something we have used as a team more than Todoist. Trello is a Kanban board app. And a Kanban board is kind of like you create a shared workspace with lists that go kind of like vertically. And inside of those vertical lists are cards, which you can stack on top of each other horizontally. And what I like about Kanban boards is you can use them as task managers and sort of, rather than like something sort of being done or not, like unchecked or checked, what Trello allows you to do is sort of more like track the status of things. So like you could have a list that's called like things to pack in the car, and then you could have another list that says things packed, and you can just drag and drop the card from one list to the other in a really tactile, delightful kind of user interface. So you can kind of track the status of things. Every card can have files attached to it, sub-conversations, individual checkable to-do tasks within a card. And again, because there's like just so many cool collaborative features pumped into it, you can kind of really like use it in any way you want. We have actually a couple of Trello boards we've tried in the past that don't necessarily function like to-do lists. I thought maybe it would be worth sharing like how we've used it for our Pi fundraiser before.
We have used it for the Pi fundraiser before, and we've had a number of different things that we've used Trellos for. Fundraiser is incredibly easy because there's all those different things, all those, like for instance, pies that haven't been picked up or pies that need to get paid for. Or they can move on different lists, and you can move those cards from one spot to the other once they're taken care of. So rather than having like a whole list of all the things that have to happen, as they happen, you just move the card from, like, this person ordered 10 pies. Did they pick them up? Yes, they did. So they can move it over to another time. Or I want to schedule a pickup with, four parents coming at this time. I'll say, here's a Monday 7:30 pickup time, and I'll move the cards for the people who need to pick up those pies. We do a pie fundraiser. And so that allows us to keep track of that a lot. But there's also some other ways you can use Trello that I thought were really interesting. One of the things what we use Trello for a lot from the youth orchestra perspective is we'll brainstorm a whole list of pieces that we're interested in doing and put them in a column and say, pieces are pieces that we are really interested in doing. And then we'll have the next column, pieces that match our instrumentation for this next year. And so we'll pare that down to pieces that match our instrumentation that we can actually do that year. And then we can compare different things. And then we have that as a resource. Every time we go back to looking for new music, we can go back to that list and say, oh, here are brainstormed ideas that we had. What can we do to make those happen again this year? So that does give us a little bit more flexibility with that as well.
Yeah, I really like how flexible it is. And I think that this has been a better sell for people, like getting people to collaborate inside of Trello documents with me, because it's just like graphically a type of interface that I think people understand, because it looks like, it's like, one of those kind of like interactive activities where, a teacher passes out a bunch of index cards to a table of students, and they have to like organize or match different index cards. Like you could just see the cards and understand immediately, hey, like these are grabbable and movable. And then of course click into them to have more contextual information. And Trello can also integrate with Slack, and the Slack integration is really tight. You can actually associate a board with a channel in Slack. So you can type, there's like a little string of text you type. So like we have a Pi fundraiser Slack channel, and we can have our Trello board linked to that channel, and then we can add stuff into our Trello board from within the Slack channel without even having to open it, which again is great. I love it.
And the other thing I really like about Trello is if you have a repeated task and you're going to do it again the next year, all you have to do is drag those same cards back to the beginning place and you start again. So you can make notes or change up what you want to change up, but you have all those pieces of the puzzle already there.
Totally. Anything else you want to say about Trello?
No, I like the fact that it's that graphic organizer. It really allows you to see things. Back in the day, we used to schedule solo and ensemble festivals using index cards and days. And it reminds me of that sort of tactile ways of managing and organizing information. And so that's always been appealing to me.
And it's on the web, so you can use it in a web browser, you can use it on your phone, you can use it on your tablet. It's especially fun on the tablet because you can just touch and drag the cards. Cool. Well, I'm going to take a moment for a sponsor break. This week's sponsor is Light the Music. This episode of Music Ed Tech Talk and this month of the blog is sponsored by Light the Music. You can find them at lightthemusic.com. Light the Music empowers educators to ignite student creativity and collaboration. Using a digital audio workstation, students learn about the fundamentals of music while creating their own music that is authentic, relevant, and meaningful to them. Light the Music provides a curriculum aligned with the creating strand of the National Core Arts Standards. As students are introduced to the technology tools, they create an artist's profile to guide their work throughout the curriculum. Students then learn about the elements that make up a piece of music: rhythm, chords, bass, and melody. They learn concepts by recreating and remixing, then use that knowledge to create something new. In each lesson, students share their work with classmates to give and receive feedback that is kind, specific, honest, and helpful. The Light the Music curriculum comprises 8 units and 26 lessons, containing tutorial videos, templates, resources, and slides to make teaching easy. In each lesson, students learn, practice, and apply new skills. The curriculum offers a scaffolded structure for teachers to sequence lessons, yet contains enough flexibility for students to get support or dive deeper when desired. Students will work towards creating their own piece of music and video to go along with it. At the conclusion of the 8 units, students share their work in a final showcase. Light the Music is ideal for students in 6th through 12th grade general music, music technology, music appreciation, or any other music course where student creativity is a goal. Additional standalone lesson plans for teachers looking for a one-time project are also available. If you'd like to learn more, check out www.lightthemusic.com. Well, this brings me to, I don't know, is this the elephant in the room? I think we should probably talk about Google Docs. It is one of the most popular Office suite collaboration tools. And I know that the Howard County Public School System where we teach is all in on Google Docs. I don't know. We're using it. What is it good for? What is it bad at? Let's start there.
It's good for a lot. I think the most important thing is you have to realize that your Google Drive has to be organized. And if you start by organizing your Google Drive in a way that makes sense, you can find the docs that you need. It can be incredibly helpful. Until you take that step, it's a great place for things to get lost. And that being said, I mean, Google is a search company. It is easy to find things within your Google Drive. But organizing your Google Drive and making sure that everything's in the right spot and shared correctly with the right people is a big, important step. That said, it's really, really helpful for editing things with large groups of people. The way you can go back in revision history and get back things that are lost is top notch. There's a lot of all the tools that you have at your disposal are help you tremendously getting things between Google Forms. I use Google Forms all the time to collect information from students. We just recently had to collect vaccination status for a number of students for a trip to go play with the Baltimore Symphony. They require that information, and the school system is not collecting it. So we had to come up with a Google form that was able to populate that Google Doc, and we were able to get that information from students. And I think it took us 36 hours to get all the responses, which is unbelievable, really, if you think about what you have to do. And so there's a lot of ways we use Google Docs for assignments, all sorts of things.
Yeah, I think where Google Docs falls down is that there's two main ones for me. The first is that Google Docs is really like optimized for the web. It's not like some of these other tools we've mentioned where it feels fully at home. I wouldn't say that any like Trello or Todoist feel fully at home on devices like the iPad and Android phones and like Macs and Windows PCs and stuff, but they feel like, the apps are kind of thoroughly designed. Google Docs really feels like they want you to use it in a web browser. And sure, the apps on the mobile devices are fine, but it's not the same like as, I feel like when I'm in Microsoft Word or even Apple's Pages, I feel like I have a little bit more control over what I'm doing. Like everything is saved locally to the hard drive. I don't need an internet connection. The buttons are tactile. I can't accidentally close my tab. Or like go back a tab, go back in my search history by accidentally like swiping too far to the right when I'm scrolling around the document. Like there's just a good solid feeling to making stuff creatively and having the app perform really efficiently and powerfully and quickly, which Google is not. The other thing that frustrates me a lot about Google is the sharing features. It's actually what makes it so good is how comfortably you can have a bunch of people in the same document. But I find that the settings for sharing documents, for like figuring out, is this public? Is this shared with just people who have the link? Who is in this file? It's just really cumbersome to me. And especially when like people from our school, like team leaders, will share documents with me. It's kind of weird to me that those kind of go into a separate area of Google Drive and I have to manually choose to organize them in my own workspace. And there's like a dichotomy between those two ideas where I honestly like don't end up organizing it like you do. I end up just kind of like depending on the search, and I have to ask myself like, okay, did someone share it with me or did I make it? And if I made it, it's usually in my workspace in the recents area. And then if someone shared it, I go to shared and then search and hope that I can remember what one of the people who shared it with me named it. That's me.
I mean, that is the difficulty. If someone's setting it up or sending you Google Docs and they don't have it organized, if I have a team of people and I put them all in the same folder and I share the folder and I create a I create a document in that folder, then I know that all the things that I'm sharing with that team of people are going to be in that folder as long as they do the same thing. And that saves a lot of the time and energy in the sharing permissions, because you know that team of people is going to use that document from that folder and everybody has access to it. So that does help. But yes, if you just share it randomly with someone, then it goes anywhere, and it's got to be organized too. You have to put an alias, you have to link in the right way, and it is cumbersome. The other thing I want to mention is that there's still things in Google Docs that don't work as well as other programs. Number one, formulas. If I've got something in Sheets, I know the formulas in Excel. I know the formulas in Numbers. I can pull them out, run the formulas, and then plug the data back into Google Docs, to the Google Sheets, and that works well. And Excel is great for formulas. They've got formulas that are not on Numbers, that are not in the Google Sheets. And the Numbers program for Mac is great because the ability to have multiple worksheets all on the same page and resize them and format them and all that is really, really easy to work with. So there are definitely times where I pull things out of Google Docs and then put them back in after I'm done working them.
One of the really frustrating ones for me is Google Slides. And Google Slides is, the idea of like presenting information and having that be like, being able to really quickly share a link to a presentation with someone, like that's a very powerful idea. But presentation editing tools like PowerPoint and Keynote, I'm always like manipulating graphics and shapes and text boxes and things. And I need to feel like when I move the mouse, it's like behaving with me. And Google Sheets is a hot mess. Like if you take like an image and you drag it from one place to the other, as of like a few weeks ago, like you don't even see the image in the process of dragging it. Like it disappears when you're moving your mouse, and then you have no sense of place where you're about to drop it. Not to mention that things drag and drop really, really kind of clunkily. Is that a word? It's just not a smooth feeling. I almost never want to be in Google Sheets at all.
I don't think I've used Google Slides at all for that reason. I use a lot of Keynote personally, but at the same time, if you've ever done any work in HTML and you realize what they're trying to do in HTML, it's really quite impressive what they've been able to do. It just doesn't work as well as something that happens natively still.
Right. So, yeah, I think for me, we're going to talk about some competitors a little bit further down the outline, but I do, for me, I try to use Google Docs for what it's good at. So making a real bare bones presentation or just a text document to share with someone is great. The second I want to start making it pretty, I generally go to the Apple stuff because I think it's a lot easier to work with text and images and shapes and make a really nice looking thing. So a lot of stuff that I print ends up getting made in iWork, whereas a lot of stuff that I share will start and end in a Google Doc. And Google Docs, because it's on the web, integrates with almost everything. You can integrate it with Slack. It'll when you type in a URL in a Slack conversation, it'll embed the whole thumbnail so you can see a preview of what the document looks like. It even installs a special bot that you can have conversations with inside of your Slack channel. That's called the Google Drive. I think it's just called Google Drive. And this is actually my primary way of even knowing when someone gives me a document, because if I get shared, if a document is shared with me in Google Drive, Slack will actually tell me. And when I share Google Drive documents with other people in a Slack channel, it'll actually even know if the members of that Slack channel are shared, if I have properly shared it with their email addresses from the settings of the Google Doc. And without even leaving the Slack thread, it'll let me click a little button saying, do you want to share this document properly with the people on this channel, which is really quite handy. I'll also say it's really easy to take a Google Doc and embed it into another place. So we have Canvas is our learning management software, and Canvas pages and assignments allow you to embed HTML. And sometimes rather than having your students click 100 different places, it's nice to just put a little Google form or a little slideshow right there on the screen with some other information.
Yeah, there have been times where I've taken documents that I've done in Pages or something like that and copied and pasted them into Google Docs just because of the ease of sharing it.
And one thing you can do too, and not a lot of people have done this, but you can actually install the Google Drive app. I know that Windows and Macs have an app where your Google Drive folder will just show up inside of the file system along your other documents. So, it's kind of nice. If you keep a lot of things in your Google Drive that are not actual Google Docs, Google Slides, Sheets, and Docs, if you things like PDFs or images or video files, you can edit them right from within the Finder or the File Explorer, just using your own computer software, and then all changes are saved back to the cloud, where someone else who might be like in the web browser version of Google Docs will see all of those updates from their end.
That's really true. I had a couple 3 or 4 years ago. It had stopped working for me, and so I hadn't gone back in there. And I was like, oh, as Robbie was just mentioning that opening up, I wonder if it works now. Oh yeah, it works much better now. They fixed it.
They did. The only problem is that the new version on Mac, the way it displays it to you is rather than using Apple's cloud file provider APIs, they create a disk image on your hard drive. So it's like you see the files as if they're in the Finder, but they're actually not storing a local copy anywhere. And the only downside to this that I found, which is a pretty frustrating one, is that searching the Spotlight of your hard drive no longer will turn up results that are inside of your Google Drive. So I guess This is a decent lead into competitors. It's tough to talk about competitors because like all of these apps also have cloud drives that are made by their companies. Google has kind of like, I think that, Google sort of blurs or abstracts this idea that Google Docs is separate from Google Drive. But they really do they have web apps, and then they have like sort of a storage service that stores all of your work. And because all of it happens on the web, they've sort of, I think in a lot of people's eyes, those two ideas are sort of all just like bleeding together. Whereas companies like Apple and Microsoft, they have actual apps that run, you install them on your computer for their Office suites. And then they also have these like file storage apps that you install on your computer, which show up as folders. And then you can kind of like work with them. And I only mention that because you can put a Pages or a Microsoft Word document inside of any service, like that you can mix and match your cloud services. But if you want to collaborate with someone else on an iWork document or collaborate with someone on a Microsoft Office document, to my knowledge, you still need to have the location of the file be inside of the cloud service that company owns. So like if I want to share with you a numbers spreadsheet, it's got to be in a folder inside of our iCloud drives.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird to have lots of...
It would be much harder. I was going to say it would be much harder for a company to be able to have support across a number of different storage devices.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's going to eventually come, you can actually, it's interesting, you can collaborate on iWork stuff using, like Box.com, they're a competitor to Dropbox. You can properly share and collaborate on an iWork document through Box.com, which makes no sense to me why them and not one of the more major ones like Google Drive or Dropbox. But there you go. Speaking of Dropbox, I'll just say I still use it for some stuff. I think that it is still the easiest cloud service to dump a file inside of it and get a quick link to it copied to my clipboard. And so when someone says, hey, can you share this video with me or share this audio recording with me, I'll often just dump it in Dropbox, right click it, and then choose copy link to clipboard and then paste it into a text message, and then I'm on my way.
I used that Dropbox link twice this morning already. I had some posters that I had made. They're really fun little cookie form posters using Oreos and frosted cookies to talk about sonata form and ternary form and all that. And I wanted to share them with my group of middle school orchestra directors. So I popped it into my Dropbox folder and got a link and put it in the chat box, and everybody had the copies of those pictures right off the bat.
Yep, it's very cool. Very cool. Well, this kind of brings me to another area, and it's tricky to talk about these right after Google Docs because, Google Docs and word processors in general, I find that sometimes, like, if someone knows one tool on their computer, it is the word processor. And it's for this reason that a lot of people will do everything in the word processor. Like, they'll take notes in separate Word documents. They will make graphics or posters in Word. And while Word is a very powerful Swiss Army knife tool, there are other ways that you can do basics that are a little bit more easy to use. So I want to talk a little bit about notes. This is tricky because it's like, when your team is already in Google Docs, it might just make the most sense to create a Google Doc and type text into it. But a good note app is going to allow you to do a lot more. It's going to put the notes features forefront and take away all those unnecessary formatting tools and give you basics like bold, italics, color of text, headings. It's going to allow you to work with multiple different types of multimedia equally well. So it's not just for text, but you can put in images, you can put in videos, you can attach files. I really like Evernote for this. It is like Todoist and Trello in that it is a web-first experience. You don't need to have a particular device. You just create an account on their website, and then you can access your database of notes anywhere in the world from any computer. You can share links to notes just like you can Dropbox links. You can create notes that you're sharing with someone else and you're both typing into the note at the same time. You can even share an entire notebook of notes. And that's what we do. But we do this with Apple Notes, actually. So I don't know if you've used Evernote recently or if you wanted to talk about how our team uses Apple Notes.
I mean, I used Evernote when I was working on my master's program. That's probably over 10 years ago now. So I'm sure it's changed quite a bit. I use Apple Notes all the time for a number of reasons. They have the new scan document feature, which is incredibly helpful, but also just because it's a great spot to put train of thoughts. As I'm going through and planning some things for the year, there are some things I don't want to get lost in Slack. There's something I don't want to have a whole other document in a file for, but I can make a note on it, and then I can search the notes for those things. I was just earlier today, we were talking about concerts because one of our concert venues has some tiles falling from the ceiling, and they're going to have to remove all the auditorium seating to get the tiles replaced. And so we're looking for another concert venue. And so I was wondering, well, where in that process, what other concert venues were available when we were looking? And I looked up notes. I typed in the word concert, and I found the discussion or the little notes that I had taken from last May, where I noticed that there's another high school that had offered 3 dates that were the same dates that we hadn't gone with because it was a little farther away. But we know that those dates are available. We can contact those people, and that was a very easy access to that note because it was already right there in a very easy searchable format. So I use Apple Notes a lot for that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's cool because we have a shared folder in Apple Notes with our team, and unfortunately we have to all be iPhone users or Apple product users to work with this. But the cool thing is that like a Notes app is often a quicker place to go and just start typing than a Google Doc. And because we share the folder, you don't have to like share each new note. You can just create the note inside of the EMMS music team folder and then know that everyone else is going to see your work, and it can be a real nice place.
And occasionally you can create your shopping list in the wrong folder and your whole team gets to see what you're shopping for. But they don't need to see all the milk and eggs and stuff. So you make sure they get the notes in the right spot. Again, organization is everything.
Yep, totally. All right, there's a handful of other web-based tools that I'm going to brush through really quickly. I did a whole episode on Craft a few episodes ago, which I'll link in the show notes. We're using Craft to collaborate right now. It has very distinctive benefits over Google Drive. It is a complete note-taking, writing, and personal knowledge management app that has a free version on all Apple platforms and the web. And there's a lot of reasons that we like it more than Google Docs. And I know that we're both trying to move a lot of pretty much everything we possibly can out of Google Docs and into Craft. And if you're listening to this and want to know why, episode 47 will be linked in the notes.
The number one reason to use Craft, the number one reason to use Craft is that you can create a document that you can share with a student that they cannot edit, that you can edit very, very simply, and they have access to with just a link. It's great. Go ahead.
And the link sharing settings are not fussy. You just click one button, and then you know that anybody who gets that link is going to get taken to that document data. And because it acts more like a note app and a document-based app than it does a website, it just feels real slick and quick to like maneuver stuff around and create things. You just feel like you're not fighting the tool. You feel more like you're just doing the work. So I'm a big fan. Honorable mention for Notion. I know it's very popular. I'm not prepared to say anything about it. It's a competitor to Craft. I hear people love it. Airtable is kind of like, it's like sort of fusing FileMaker, which we've talked about together on this show. If you kind of take the idea of FileMaker, but you make it have a really, really pretty user interface, and then you make it all on the web so you can like share into the same databases as one another. Like it's really a cool thing. Worth a quick Google search if you're looking for that, for sure. I guess that brings us to like websites and learning management software. We've been like really moving away from our website. We have one with Squarespace, which is my favorite. What you see is what you get website creation tool. Do you want to talk about like what our website is good for, why we have one, and where maybe we could move more of our stuff off our website?
The website is incredibly helpful because our learning management system has to be accessed by people within the system. So whenever you have things that you need to tell folks that might not be in your class yet, or might not have access to a course, or that you want to say once instead of having to say at every single course that you put it in, that's where the website can be incredibly valuable. We can use it as a repository for information that we want to point to a number of times. Say there's a concert schedule, and we want to have every single one of our classes have that same concert schedule. We can put the concert schedule on the website, and then we can link that website with in all the different courses for our learning management app, and we don't have to worry about having errors, or if we have to change a concert date, we don't have to change it in all those places. We can change it in one place, and all the pointers will go back to the correct information. And it's a good way of making sure that there's one set of information that is accurate and reliable, rather than having a number of different copies of it, which you get with the learning management system because every single course is done differently.
Yeah, I think where website editors like Squarespace fall down is that even though they do put a lot of power at your fingertips in the web browser, they still ultimately do run in a web browser. And all the issues I have with something like Google Docs are amplified times 10 in Squarespace because it's trying to do so much more than a Google Doc. It can be really cumbersome to drag little like editing blocks around. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's amazing that I can edit a website like a word processor and get results that look awesome. Like it's great, but I just find myself getting a little bit buried in the clicking and the tapping, and then sometimes my internet connection gets weird, or like I accidentally close my tab and then that work isn't saved. I'm curious what you think about this. Stuff like public facing information we want anyone interested in our program to see. That stuff really belongs on our website, but I'm wondering things like we used to put our handbook on our website, and like I created a copy of that in Craft this year and just linked the Craft in my Canvas course page. So I don't know about you, but like my challenge I think in the next year is to see like where are there bits of information that are easier to maintain and create in Craft, and because Craft docs and even Google Docs can be shared as little mini URLs, just kind of like creating information in my own personal workspace and then linking out to it in the LMS.
That makes a lot of sense. As long as you have one place where you can change the information once and have a bunch of places point to it, you're going to be much better off than having to change it in a million places every time you want to change something. So having the idea that information exists in one place and it's the most easily editable and accessible place, and then having a bunch of different things point to it, then you have different purposes for different spots. The website through Squarespace, that should be showy. It should be graphically simple. You can get to information very quickly. It doesn't have to have a lot of stuff on it, but it looks pretty. And you can do so much more like with no skill than you could even do 10 years ago with an incredible knowledge of HTML. You could try as hard as you can to code 10 years ago. You wouldn't get the result you would with no experience now. So that's a big step forward. But yes, the craft challenge would be great, because trying to get more things in a document where you can control it and make it easy to edit is big.
Yeah, and our next thing on the outline is actually the learning management software itself. And I don't want to lean into this just because everybody uses a different learning management program. I do feel like, we're using Canvas in Howard County, and I do feel like one of my philosophies is to try to do more of what you're saying, which is like, use the tool for the job it's good at. And if, I do see a lot of teachers like staying up late at night, like making their Canvas modules look pristine and like being perfectly organized. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. I just feel like, I only want to use that tool to the extent that it's helpful to me. And to my knowledge, Canvas is not a very, unless you're two teachers in the same course, it's not a very collaborative workspace. You can share content you've created with another teacher, but oh man, is it like a lot of clicks and taps to find it.
Yes, my nickname for Canvas is Clicks a Lot, because everything I'm in that I'm just clicking every single thing I can to get the right result. And like this year, I have a lesson page for every one of my students that I have in Craft. And I have one page that I set up in Canvas that has links to every single student's individual lesson page. And so I can update their lesson page every time they come for a lesson with their new assignments and all of that. And they can still link for it from Canvas. It still appears right where they can find it. But I don't have to crowd Canvas with all that information. I can put it in one place in Craft where I can easily manipulate it, and then have that one link that points to the right spot for each student. And so I can differentiate. I can have everything in place. It makes it simple.
All right. Well, I hate email, but we do have to use it to communicate. Why? You kind of actually addressed it. I was going to ask, why is email so sticky? I mean, email can be everything to everyone, and I think it's standardized across all computers, all services use email in the same way. It's just carved out this little area for human beings, and we continue to use it for lots of different things, no matter how bad it is at most of those things. Why do you think email is so sticky?
Oh, my least favorite thing about email is when you get the question that if you wait 2 hours to answer, they'll have found the solution for it themselves. And this comes from professionals, it comes from students, because people don't take the time to solve a problem themselves. Email is a really easy way to ask a question. Oh, that person knows the answer. And that person who's usually good at responding to emails gets more of them. So the more you're on top of email, the more you get. And the more you get, the harder it is to stay on top, and it becomes this very, very large problem, to the point where I was doing a really good job this year. I had down to, I think it was November, I was still at 0 inbox every day. And it got to the point where I got behind a week, and I think I have 1,000 in each inbox right now, with a whole bunch of unread and a whole bunch of things that I need to respond to that are getting lost in the shuffle. So one of those things that email is so difficult at is there's no prescribed role for it. There are people who will answer the question like, when was that due again? Rather than just looking in Canvas and finding the due date, to the more complicated, questions that are things that really need to happen in email, things you'd write a formal letter for, things that are incredibly important and consequential, and they're all in the same place. And so that lack of differentiation between the very frivolous and the very consequential all in the same place is something that drives me mad.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I would say, I think to your point about email sort of being like, kind of like having so many different kinds of things in it, I try to treat my email inbox exactly like that, an inbox. It's a place where I really, really try to quickly get stuff out of it. My feeling about email, and I'm going to just brag a little bit here. I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've got 9 emails in my inbox. And all of these require decisions. That's the only reason they're in here. But if you can learn to make decisions about email really quickly, you can empty it and get it out of sight, out of mind. Some common decisions I find that emails require are like, is it a reference email? Does it require my action, or does it require a response, or does it require nothing? And once you determine what it is, I'll often send emails into other apps. For example, I use the Spark email app. It's an email client for Android and Apple devices that you can use your Gmail account with, your Outlook account with. And once I get all my email accounts into it, it adds a lot of great features, but one of which is you can send an email. You can just swipe it to send it to Todoist as a task. So like, for example, I'm looking at an email right now that requires me to do something. And so I can swipe it into Todoist, give it a due date where I have to complete that task, and now it's out of my mind. I have another one that requires a really quick response of whether or not I'm available for a certain couple of dates. I have another one that's just some information. Well, you can, with Spark Mail, swipe it the other direction and customize it to go to your Evernote. So like just a place where I can easily search that data, maybe like organize it and store it alongside other kinds of notes. And then what can eventually happen is if you can learn to make decisions about email really quickly, you can triage it. A lot of emails I'll snooze, which is a feature of Spark, where you can say, hey, I do need to read this, but I don't need this now. Future me needs this. So swipe it to come back in my inbox like in 10 days. And Spark is great too because I think it's a paid feature, but you can actually they have this whole new collaboration thing where you can have a team of people looking into the same email and commenting on it and deciding how to reply, which is nice, but I don't pay for any of that. I know you get some of these. You use Apple Mail, but you get some of these features through Sanebox, right?
Yeah, I use Sanebox a lot, especially the Sane do not. Well, not, what was it? It was the Sane later is what it is. And so you can send an email to Monday at Sanebox. So whatever is like coming in over the weekend, you don't look at it until Monday. So you have a way to, like, as you said, snooze an email for a couple of days. There's a lot of ones that I always laugh because they're way ahead of the game, and I don't need to do something for another month for this, but I don't want to lose track of it. So I'll snooze it until the day I actually have to do something about it, and then I'll get another email from the same person again saying the same thing. I'll snooze it until the day I actually have to do something about it. And then the day I actually have to do something about it, I get 10 emails, the 9 that I snoozed, plus the one that just reminds me it's really time to do that today. But, oh well, that's the way it works sometimes.
Yeah. And Sanebox is a paid service per month, but it can work with any email app and any email service. So it just works in the background. You continue to use your email normally. Spark is actually an app you have to install, but it is free. And a lot of the other email apps are adding this stuff slowly. Outlook by Microsoft, which you might use in your school district, that's got like some snoozy stuff these days. You can turn an email into a task inside of your Microsoft task list. Apple Mail is sadly behind, but there are plugins you can buy for Apple Mail that will add some of this stuff. My favorite two are Mail Acton and Mail Tags by the Mail Suite company, and those also add some of these things like, better organizing and tagging of messages and snoozing them and that thing. So, email is possible to manage, but it comes in waves, and there's always more email. Like, I can empty my inbox and I can like brag about that and feel really good, but like an hour later, there's more email. So you've gotta, at a certain time of day, you just gotta decide to close it and not look at it.
Yeah, when I choose to like spend an hour a day on email and time block email time, that's when I fall the most behind.
I that's the trick, right? Is like, that's the hard part. I do keep more on top of it when I'm constantly looking at it all day, but I'm also far less productive in doing the things that actually matter to making my students' experience better when I'm in email all day. So
exactly.
I don't know. One thing else, I've been kind of singing this tune on a few episodes lately, but I'll say one thing that has helped me is I have turned off the badge notification on Spark Mail so that it does not have a little number in a red circle if I have new mail. And I turned on, I have a focus mode that my Apple devices go into automatically when it senses that I'm within a certain range of Ellicott Mills Middle School. And that focus mode basically is set up in the settings of my iPhone. And what it does is it only allows notifications from the Messages app, from any one of the people on our team, or from the Slack app to notify any of my devices. All other notifications are silenced. Actually, no, you can set it up so that time-sensitive things, like if I make a task due at a certain time, that'll show up. But no other notifications will show up. And it has been really helpful because I'll just kind of forget that email exists because there's nothing indicating to me that it needs my attention, and it's helped a lot.
That's good as long as Mary and Theo don't need to get a hold of you.
No, they're allowed to get through. Texts from them are available on all my different focus modes.
Nice.
All right. Should we do some app, album, and tech tip of the week?
Sounds good.
Let's do tech tip. So I have talked about Air Server before. I know you use Air Server. It's a real cool utility for Windows and Mac that allows you to screen share a mobile device to your computer screen. So like what I do with this is a lot, just as one example, is the Tonal Energy Tuner app that I use to provide metronome and tuning drones does not have a Mac app. So I will sometimes stream it to Air Server, which will make it appear in a little window on my Mac. And then all of the sound output of my iPad will come through my Mac speakers, or in this case, in our rehearsal space, my Mac is plugged into some really loud speakers. So it'll make my iOS stuff come through the Mac speakers, even though it is not wired to my Mac. Oh, sorry, that wasn't the tip, though. The tip, that's how I was doing this. But now, as of Mac OS Monterey, I believe is the current version of the Mac operating system, you can now AirPlay a an iOS device to your Mac. So I don't need Air Server. It's just a little bit more natively baked into the experience. One other cool kind of side effect of this is just that when I'm at home and I'm streaming my iPhone to all of our smart speakers, my best speakers in the basement studio are like these nice studio monitors. And yeah, I have a little HomePod mini right here, which is kind of fun for like telling Siri to turn on the lights and stuff. But like I can now actually have one of the sources of my phone's audio go directly to the Mac, which is plugged into those speakers. So I can kind of have like my different speaker systems in sync with each other throughout the house. And now my studio monitors in the basement get to kind of play with that, which is nice.
That's really cool. It's like a cheaper version of Sonos that works.
Yeah. Some of the Sonos speakers play too, though, because they all work with AirPlay. So I can take my phone's music app and output the audio to a HomePod in one room, a Sonos in another room, and my studio monitors in the basement.
Sounds cool. So my tech tip of the week is a Chrome extension called Tango. Every once in a while, you have a number of things you're trying to explain how to do something on the web, and Tango lets you put a whole bunch of steps together and create a step-by-step sort of video like instruction type thing that will help the people you're trying to explain get through that set of steps. So it breaks it down into very simple steps that anybody can follow. Click here, uses screenshots, does all sorts of fun stuff. But it takes one more step away from you. Again, like one step easier.
Yeah, it's because so many teachers live in Chrome OS, or just even in they do all of their work in the Chrome web browser. That kind of thing, I feel like is a good tool if you're making those kinds of resources. All right, well, let's do app of the week. My app of the week is called Matter, and Matter is a read it later app for I think you can get it on your desktop computer, but I use it on my mobile devices. And I used to use a thing called Instapaper for this, but Matter has a couple of features that I really like. But first, I guess I should explain what a read it later app is. Basically, I can share website articles into the Matter app, and then it will strip out all of the ads, all of the HTML fluff, and just provide for me kind of a newspaper style. Like I can just scroll through the text with all the images and other things embedded in it. So it makes websites have this kind of like really nice reading experience. It also allows you a place to store stuff you want to look at later. And, Instapaper does all this too, but one of the things that you have to pay Instapaper for is the ability to add highlights and annotations to website articles. And Matter just has that baked in as a free feature. And you can even set up Matter to share your highlights and notes to other note apps. So like, I think it works with the Evernote. It definitely works with Obsidian, which is where I'm taking most of my notes these days. It's even got a little like play button at the top of the article where a somewhat natural robot voice will like read you the website. So I like it quite a bit. It's pretty. It just makes it nice to read the internet.
Awesome. My app of the week is Spotify. If you're ever looking for a great place to get some questionable information about COVID protocols, podcasts and something. No, I'm just joking. My app of the week is actually Adagio. Since everything's come out about Spotify, we've been looking for different ways to find music streaming. So Adagio is my go-to, especially as orchestral conductor. There's so much from the classical music world that is available on Adagio. I'm working on Brahms 2 with the youth orchestra. So you go on Adagio and you see very quickly that there are recordings with 109 different conductors and 86 different ensembles. And they run the gamut all the way from, really old recordings. I think there's, the oldest one in here is like 1957. Nope, keeps going. So really old recordings like in the 30s, 40s, 50s, all the way to current recordings. And it gives you access to all of them, and which is fantastic. When you have a piece that you're studying like Brahms, there's a lot of different takes on it. There's, the tempo markings, allegro, non-troppo. No one comes close to 120. But at the same time, there's this back and forth between How much do you want to be true to the tempo? How much do you want to hear every single layer that's incredibly written throughout the symphony? Do you want to slow it down so you can hear every single nuance and dissonance, or do you want to speed it up so it has some motion and has drive to it? And so being able to look through all the different recordings and listen to them and find out different takes was incredibly helpful. I'm going to segue into my album of the week because I've been listening so much of this Brahms too. I mean, I found this great recording, Philadelphia Orchestra with Wolfgang Swalish from 2006. That just hits the spot for me. It's right in that middle, has motion to it, yet it managed to highlight all the things that I think are most interesting about the piece as well. So, and that can be completely different for anybody else's take, and you have all those things available for you, and helps you look at all the different ways people have interpreted a piece of music over the years, which is incredible.
My album pick actually also relates to Adagio because I was thinking earlier this week, I don't remember what made me think that I wanted to listen to Glenn Gould's recording of the Bach Italian Concerto in F, but I knew that I wanted it, and I knew that it was on a specific album he had recorded, and for whatever reason, even though Apple Music is my primary streaming app where I listen to stuff and like collect albums together, Adagio is absolutely my like searching and metadata tool. Like it's worth the price just to be able to search for the stuff. And so I was able to find it there. And I just looked for the artwork and I was like, oh, that's the album title. And then I found it in Apple Music and I added it. But that's it's a great tool. Did you see that Apple bought Primephonic, a competitor to Adagio, earlier this year?
I did see that.
Yeah, I'm interested. Apple has said
they
are
see how
not
they
only
do that.
Right. They've said not only are they going to improve classical search in the Apple Music app, but they're going to actually release an app like Adagio, like under their own brand, presumably. I'm very curious to see what happens to that, and will that be covered under, like, my Apple One subscription? Just like, I don't want to talk about Spotify actually on second thought, but I just in case anyone is confused, Spotify is in the news lately. Neil Young and Joni Mitchell and a few other artists removed their music from Spotify in protest of COVID misinformation on the Joe Rogan podcast. But I feel like, though, wrapped up in a lot of discussions I've read about this is also like maybe people are finally reckoning with the fact that Spotify and Apple Music and like none of these streaming companies pay artists anything.
Right.
So like why, I mean, COVID misinformation is certainly a hill to die on, but like, these companies are all cheating artists, period. Spotify is arguably the most evil of them all. But anyway, so as I say in context of a conversation with where we are both streaming lots of music for $7 a month or whatever, but so yeah, I mean it's just if you're looking for Spotify alternatives, that's the camp you're finding yourself in. Certainly Adagio is great. A Title is pretty good if you're looking for like more generalized kind of selection, like classical but also pop and jazz and things. I really like Title because they preserve the album notes in context of the record. So like if you're listening to a John Coltrane record, you can like see who performed and soloed on each track on a per track basis, and you can even read like the mixing engineer's name and like the producer and all of that stuff. Really cool.
By the way, you had mentioned Apple Music, and I was curious to see if they had shored up their collection at all. And they do have actually one of my favorite discs of all time now available on Apple Music, which is a disc called The Chicago Principal. It was a 1983 collection of principal musicians from the Chicago Symphony playing concerti. Everything from Ray Still playing Mozart Oboe Concerto to Bud Herseth playing the Haydn Trumpet Concerto, or Dale Clevenger playing the Mozart Horn Concerto. So many cool things. I think there's one with Arnold Jacobs playing the Vaughan Williams Tuba Concerto. Yeah, just so many cool things. The Concertstück for four horns with the Chicago horn section. Really cool stuff. Anyway,
yeah,
that's
absolutely
the Chicago Principal.
Yeah, totally a great. I'll link that album as well, and totally a great and also formative record for me. I remember that being one that like I was pointed towards at a time where I was just thinking to myself like, how do I like have great models and heroes on instruments that I don't play? And that was one of the albums that was recommended to me early in my teaching life. Like this is definitely one you should listen to, and it's great. All right, I think we made it. We made it to the end. I'm just asking, is there any place on the web where people can find you and your work?
Oh, not currently. I have nothing ready.
Okay, great. Then you will find Ben Denne nowhere other than he has a nice little bio on the Ellicott Mills Middle School music website.
I'm not doing anything good with shameless self-promotion these days. This is not good.
That's fine. You're hiding in the dark. You're doing the work quietly in the shadows, as they say. All right, cool. Well, this was fun.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right, I'm Robbie Burns. Thanks for listening to Music Ed Tech Talk. And also, thanks to this episode's sponsor, Light the Music. You can find them at lightthemusic.com. You can find the show's page, show notes for this episode, and my blog at musicedtechtalk.com. You can subscribe to blog posts through an RSS app of your choice, and you can subscribe to the podcast in a podcast app of your choice. You can now get blog posts delivered right into your email inbox once a week. Please rate and review the show in the podcast app you use. It absolutely helps. It'll only take a second and a few taps. Word of mouth is helpful too, so please spread the word about the show. You can learn more about my teaching and music career at robbieburns.com. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube at Robbie Burns. Please consider supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/musicedtechtalk. All support tiers get perks, but even the base tier gets you a monthly video update with app and music recommendations and tech tips, and access to the Music Ed Tech Talk Discord community, where you can chat with other supporters and guests of the show about music, apps, pedagogy, lesson ideas, tech support, and more. It's a fun place to be. All right, and we'll see you next time.